Shalom everyone, hope everyone's doing well. Be'ezat Hashem, today in Masechet Sanhedrin, we're going to learn Chaf Aleph Mud Bet at the bottom and turn towards Chaf Bet Mud Aleph, 21b to 22a. And we'll have one section in our learning today, really. We'll focus in the beginning about the obligation of a king to write a Sefer Torah, this unique obligation. And this will lead us to a discussion about how the Torah was initially given, the script and language, and how perhaps things changed in the days of Ezra. It's a fascinating discussion here, which will lead us until tomorrow's learning as well. Bezrat Hashem, our learning should be as a zechut, a merit for refuah shlema, a speedy and full recovery for Yaakov ben Dinan. We should hear B'sarot Tovot. So let's get started. We're starting about 20 lines from the bottom, or 15 lines from the bottom of the page. V'kotev Sefer Torah lishmos. We said in the Mishnah 3 halachot. One of the halachot about a king was he has to write a Sefer Torah for his name, for himself. So Tana the Braita elaborates and says like this: Ubilvad shelo yitna'eha b'shel avotav. Not that he glorifies himself with that of his ancestors, meaning the king's Sefer Torah, he has to write it especially for himself, not just to inherit a unique Sefer Torah from his parents, but rather that he has to actually write one himself. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Afal pishe inicho la'avotav la'adam Sefer Torah. And this is a general rule. Generally, regular Jews have an obligation also to write a Sefer Torah. So says Rabba, even though a person inherited a Sefer Torah from his ancestors, but mitzvah lichtov mishalo, he actually has a separate obligation. This is not a king. A regular person has an obligation to write a Sefer Torah. Shenamar, like it says in the Pasuk, towards the end of the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu says, V'ata kitvu lachem et hashira azot. Hashem tells Moshe actually, write this song, which is a reference to the entire Torah, the way we're expounding the verse now, and l'lameda et bnei Yisrael, etc., teach the Jewish people. But the point is, every Jew has an obligation to write a Sefer Torah. It's not just enough to inherit one from one's ancestors. And that's talking, as Rabbah is explaining, about general Jews have an obligation to write a Sefer Torah. Abaye is the kasha against Rabbah. But the Braita we learned before said, V'kotev lo Sefer Torah lishma, that a king has to write his own Sefer Torah. Shelo yitna'eh b'shel acherim. He can't glorify on his ancestors' one, meaning to say that he can't just inherit one from his ancestors, he has to write his own unique one. But the implication of the Braita is, this is a special exception of kings. Melech in hejot lo, meaning a king, in order to fulfill his obligation, cannot inherit a Sefer Torah. He actually has to write a special one, implying that hedyotot could just inherit one. So the Gemara answers lo. Tzricha l'shtei Torot. It means it's a reference to the two Torot. Meaning to say, let me just explain it and we'll see it inside, is there's two separate obligations. Every normal commoner, non-kings, has an obligation to write a Sefer Torah, and it's not sufficient to inherit that from your ancestors. But a king has an additional obligation, which is a separate Sefer Torah that he also has to write. We'll see it, and it has unique qualities to it. And in regards to that also, he has to write it. It's not enough to inherit it from his parents. What does it mean? Uchedatanya, as the Braita elaborates. Pasuk says, V'katav lo et mishneh ha-torot. It says he shall write mishneh Torah, the double Torah. So mishneh, that key word, the way Rabbah explains it is as follows. Kotev lishmo shtei Torot. He has to write for himself two Torot. Achat shehi yotz'a v'nechneset imo. One that goes out and in with him when he travels out to war, comes back in wherever he is going. Ve'achat shemunechet lo bebeit gnazav. And one that he leaves in storage. So the one that travels with him is the unique one that the king has to do. And again, he has to write it, not inherit it. One that he leaves in storage is like every other Jew, seemingly. Ota sheyotzeh v'nechneset imo. That one that goes out and in with him. We could read with the parentheses, although the Marshal takes it out. But oseota kemin kemea, he makes it like an amulet. V'toleh bizro, hangs it on his arm. Shenamar, like it says, sheviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, I place Hashem opposite me constantly. Ki miyamini balemot, on my right arm, and I won't remove it. It's a reference. King has to have this Torah on him constantly. However, eino nechnas ba v'lo lebeit hamerchatz v'lo lebeit hakisei. Although this special Sefer Torah of the king has to be with him constantly, he does not go in the bathroom with it, in the bathhouse or in the bathroom. Shene'amar, like it says, Va'ita imo v'kara bo, it says, Kol yimei chayav. It should be with him and he should read it all the days of his life. So the way we expound the pasuk is, Makom ha'ra'oi likraot bo, that he takes it with him in a place that it's fitting for him to read from it. Since you can't read from the Torah in the bathroom or the bathhouse, he doesn't bring it in there. But the Gemara is saying is, really by a hedyot, the king also has that idea, but he leaves in his storage. He has to write it and not inherit it. But he has an additional obligation, which is to carry one around with him always, other than these demeaning places, obviously. And that obligation is unique to him, and he has also to write that and not inherit it from his ancestors. Now, the way Rabbah expounded the verse Mishneh Torah is to understand that he has to write 2 Sifrei Torah. However, this leads us to another Shita of Mar Zutra, who expounds the verse differently, and it's actually a reference to how the Torah's script that it was originally given in, and then eventually changed to some degree, which is a big chidush. Mishneh doesn't mean to, but it means change, lashon shinui. Very interesting thing. That's going to be this shita, as we'll see now, and this will lead us to a discussion tomorrow with other shitot. Amar Mar Zutra, ve'item Mar Ukva. So Mar Zutra, Mar Ukva said the following: Batchila nitna Torah liYisrael b'kitav ivri v'lashon hakodesh. Originally, the Torah was given in the days of Moshe to the Jewish people in the Ivri script. Now, Ivri, don't get confused. It doesn't mean Ivrit like today, but this is a different script that we don't use anymore, that was used back in the day, and the Torah was written in that script, and it was also given in the language of Lashon HaKodesh, which is Hebrew, actually Hebrew. Rashi says this Ivri is used, it's like larger letters, and it's used, Rashi says, like those things that they write kemeot and mezuzot in. So apparently these are some sort of a foreign lettering. We don't use it anymore, but that's how the Torah was originally given to Moshe, with that script and in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew language. Chazra v'nitna lahem b'yemei Ezra. In the days of Ezra, there was a second, we could call it Kabbalat Torah to some degree, and it was changed in a certain sense, which was that it was written b'ktav ashurit. It was changed that now it was in the script that we know as Hebrew, our script that you see in Sefer Torah, Tefillin and Mezuzot today, Vilashon Arami, and it was actually given then in Lashon Arami. The language was Aramaic. Very interesting. We do find actually certain sections of Nevi'im, like in Sefer Daniel, for example, they're actually written in Aramaic. Very interesting. Nevi'im Ketuvim. Biriru lahen Yisrael. However, the Jews concluded, they chose for themselves Kitav Ashurit. So the Hebrew script that we have today, which was given in the days of Ezra, V'lashon HaKodesh, but the language Hebrew, which was given in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah was given in that language. V'hinichu lahedyotot k'tav ivrit, and they left over for the simpletons the Ivrit script, V'lashon Arami, and the Aramaic language. Says the Gemara, Man hedyotot. Who are these hedyotot? Amar Rav Chizda Kutai. It's very interesting. The Kutim. Kutai is the Kutim, and these are people that we know in the days of the king of Ashur, Sanhedrin Melech Ashur. He exiled the 10 northern tribes before the Churban Bayit Rishon, and in their place, he supplanted them with Goyim from other countries. One of those Goyim were called the Kutim. These Goyim lived in the northern part of Eretz Yisrael called Shomron, or Samaria, and they were attacked by lions. These Kutim converted, and it's a debate throughout Shas, if their conversion to Judaism is Gerei Emet, if they're considered a truthful conversion, or Gerei Arayot, a conversion by lions and it wasn't legitimate. And this actually leads to many discussions about the status of these people. But the bottom line is, they're considered the simpletons, and I saw brought down the art scroll shows that they still write their Sifrei Torah. Actually, they're hedyotot. They write their Sifrei Torah till today in this Kitav Ivri, which is a different script that we don't use anymore. My Kitav Ivrit, and what is this referring to, this Kitav Ivrit, this script? Is the Kitav Libuna. So it's called Kitav Libuna, the script of Libuna, which Rashi says over here is the thing that they write Kemeot and Mezuzot in. Fine. Now all of this Shita of Rabbah would seem to, of Mar Ukva, would seem to hold that as we'll see, as we're going to elaborate on now, is that initially the Torah was given in Lashon HaKodesh. It was changed in the days of Ezra, given in Aramaic, and the Jews eventually kept it in Aramaic, in Lashon HaKodesh, but the script actually changed, which is fascinating. It means seemingly so far Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah as face value, at least, in Ktav Ivri, in the script Ivri, which we don't use anymore. And it changed into Ashurit, which we do use, and we accept it till today, Sefer Torah written in that language. In that script, excuse me. So Tanya, the Braita elaborates on this shita. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says like this. Ra'oy haya Ezra shetinaten Torah al yado liYisrael. Really, the Torah would have been fitting to be given through Ezra because of the greatness of Ezra. Ilmalei lo kadmu Moshe, if not for the fact that it was already given through Moshe Rabbeinu. It means Ezra was on such a level that when he brought the Jews back from after the Purim story, actually very appropriate for this time of the year, it would have been appropriate for the Torah to be given through him, but it was already given in the days of Moshe. How do we know that there's a connection between Moshe and Ezra? Because we find the Psukim refer to them similarly. Because b'Moshe hu omer, regarding Moshe, the pasuk says, Moshe aleh el Elokim. Moshe went up to Hashem. And be'Ezra hu omer, it also says regarding Ezra, similar language, hu Ezra Allah mi Bavel. He's Ezra who ascended from Bavel. And we compare this aliyah, this elevation or ascension. Ma aliyah ha'amor kan Torah, just as the ascension said in the days of Moshe refers to how he went and he got the Torah for the Jewish people. He went up to Hashem to receive the Torah. Af aliyah ha'amor lahalan Torah. So too the aliyah referenced in Ezra is that he was fitting to have the Torah given through him. And actually, as we saw, the Ketav changed. Unbelievable. Similarly, b'Moshe hu omer, regarding Moshe, the pasuk says, V'oti tziva Hashem ba'etahi, Hashem commanded me at that time, to teach you the statutes and the rulings. And be'Ezra omer, similar language by Ezra, it says, Ki Ezra echin levavo, Ezra prepared his heart lidrosh et Torat Hashem, to expound the Torah of Hashem, v'la'asot, and to perform, u'lelamed b'Yisrael chok u'mishpat, and to teach amongst the Jews statutes and rulings. So it's the same language. So says the Gemara, even though it wasn't given in his days, means tachlis speaking, it was given in the days of Moshe, it wasn't really given in the days of Ezra, but as we said before, nishtanel yado aktav, like Marukva or Marzutra was explaining. The ktav was changed, the script was changed, says Rav Yossi. Where do we find this? Shana Amar, because in Ezra the pasuk tells us, and I saw Art Scroll shows us, that there was a letter sent by Gentiles who were living in Eretz Yisrael to the Persian king protesting the Jews resettling Eretz Yisrael. This is after, in the days when the Jews were coming back from exile, after Churban Bayit Rishon. And it says, Uchtav hanishdevan, the changed script, Katuv Aramit, was written in Aramit, which is Aramaic, umetorgam Aramit, and it was expressed in Aramaic. Now, just to explain over here, the script was Aramit, but really it means Ashurit, just to be clear. What does that mean? It means apparently this script, which was the change of Ashurit, was adopted, Ashurit, we're going to see it's a language of Ashur, from Assyria. It was actually adopted by the people living in Bavel as well, where the Jews were, this language. And since it was adopted there, it became known as Aramit, even though it's really Ashurit. To be clear, it's a little bit confusing. It means the Iranians also accepted this Ashurit, the script of Ashur. That's why it's called Ashurit, happens to be. But this was the changed script. What I mean the changed script is because this language changed from Ivri, which we're going to see that's what it's referencing, to Ashurit, to this other script which we know as Ashurit. And this is earlier in the story, in the days of Belshazzar, who was a wicked king of the Babylonian kings. It says by his party, there was this unique story with handwriting on the wall, and it says, Lo kahalin, not like these, ktava lemikre, this script could they read, ufishrei, or express, clarify, lehoda'a lemalka, to inform the king. Meaning there was a story when Belshazzar had his party and he was a wicked person who used, again, the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash inappropriately. There was handwriting on the wall, which was in this new script that we're talking about. This is earlier in the story. And nobody was able to explain it. Now, why was no one able to explain it? Seemingly because it was changed. Meaning, as opposed to the old script, which was Ivri, it was changed to some degree and it was unique in a sense. It was Ashurit that people didn't necessarily recognize. Uchtiv, and the pasuk tells us, again, this is referencing back to the kings, and this is how Mar Ukva or Mar Zutra is arguing on Rabba's original pshat. It says, "V'katav et Mishnah Torah azot." He shall write this Mishnah Torah. Now, Mishnah is not interpreted here that he shall write two Torot like we learned under Rabba's pshat, but rather, "Ktav hara'oi leishtanot." It's a reference. This is a writing. The Torah would change its script. Mishnah means a change, like lehishtanot, to change. And meaning to say is even though in the days of Moshe it was given in the script of Ivri, which is a different script, in the days of Ezra it was changed, as we just evidenced from those verses, to a different script, which is why they didn't recognize it, to what we know as Ashurit, which is what the Sefer Torah are written until today. Lama nekra Ashurit, according to this approach, why is it called Ashurit? Shalai mahem Ashur, because it was brought up with them from Ashur, meaning that the Arameans had adopted this script as well from Ashur. That became the commonly written script, and they accepted it also, and then eventually the Torahs were actually written in that script. Now this is a fascinating pshat. The problem with this whole Mahalach Asar goes to a lengthy explanation of this, is it would appear from here, according to this pshat of Mar Ukva, the Torah was not originally written in Ashurit. This is difficult on many levels. It brings many rayas from Chazal that this appears to be difficult. And he brings from the Ritva that the pshat is that really the original Torah of Moshe and the Luchot were actually written in Ashurit. However, it was such a special language that only those very special Sfarim known to the Chachamim were written in Ashurit, but even the Sefer Torah of the common people to study was actually written in Ivri. This was like the common folk script. Therefore, later in history, when it was changed, it wasn't necessarily recognized by the common folk, but it was recognized by the great people who were privy to this language, a script of Ashurit, like Daniel, for example. And therefore, he explains that a little bit differently, but the bottom line is, the way Ritva is explaining at least, this pshat, is that the general script wasn't Ashurit until later in history. That became for everyone. Arayom, the Sefer Torah in general, are also written in Ashurit, not just perhaps the high, unique Svarim for the Chachamim and only them alone. But the bottom line is, what we're showing is the Machloket, how we expound Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah. According to Rabbah, we're explaining it means the king writes two Sefer Torah. According to Mar Ukva or Mar Zutra, is the script of Sefer Torah changed at a certain time in history in the days of Ezra from the original Ivri, which is a different script we don't use today that the Kutim actually use, to a new script we call Ashurit. Again, and the Ritva throws in, maybe it was existing already, just not for everyone, etc. That's the Pshat Mishneh. It's Lashon Hilishtanot, to change. And we're going to stop here at the top of Chaf Bet Amud Aleph. We're going to continue tomorrow with a third explanation, actually, perhaps, who argues on this. Zrat Hashem, we'll get to that tomorrow, though. Everybody have a wonderful day.